TimberSurf here with Draw and Print 3D number 2. I'm currently building some low relief high-rise flats, and as you can see the long tall gaps here, I'm going to have some balconies with the window set back. Now my original idea was that I was going to glue matchsticks together and make a framework to set inside, but it was turning out to be very fiddly and I need about 10 of them. So I thought, having just bought the 3D printer, maybe that's what I should have a go at. So I laid one on its side and put the rest vertically because I'd never done a print before. I didn't know how it was going to go or whether you need supports or something, and gave it a go. And as you can see, the results are not so good. Basically, I broke the bottoms off trying to get them off the base plate. This is one of the problems, is that if you can get it stick to the base plate, it ends up sticking very hard. And that's probably why they use platforms and little stems and then put the actual object up in the air on support systems. So I've got to develop that and learn from my mistakes. But certainly the bottom flat one came out quite well, and I eventually beefed up the base and managed to get a finer scraper so that I didn't break them. I could actually knife them off the plate, and after making quite a few, I'm sure I can get 10 good ones out of them. So for my next adventure, I thought I'd try something a little more 3D, and essentially I'd just been watching a video about someone building their layout with some pigs on, and it suddenly struck me, yeah, I'm going to have a farm and I need some pigsties. So I also thought that would be a good exercise at 3D design to see how well corrugated iron would come out. So cobbled together a little design and suddenly thought, oh, I could make some troughs while I'm at it. They're pretty small, we'll see how they come out. And hey presto, the results are pretty impressive. I'm not quite sure what's gone wrong with the sides bowing. That might be a function of warming them up in the sun because I haven't made my UV curing boxes yet, or whether it needs more strength. These are the things I need to learn as I go along. So the next item I needed was some bollards. I need to put them around the front of a different set of flats I'm also making. So it seemed a very simple thing to design. Knocked up the design, threw it on the printer, and that came out pretty successfully. So feeling more adventurous, I decided to see how well I could get the finer detail of things like planking and circular things with more complex shapes on. So I had a go at barrels, and I went to the trouble of putting in the planks and beveling the edges to give the little gaps down the side of the wood. Unfortunately, they don't really come out very well. It seems a thing that I'm learning is that actually doing things to the real world scale is so small that even if the printer can actually do it, it doesn't actually come out. So exaggerating things seems to be the way forward. But encouraged by the smaller things, as I often do, started to get adventurous and went for something a bit bigger and more complex. So I thought, okay, I eventually want to do buildings, but I better start with a small one. So I thought, yeah, a little single garage would be the answer, and designed up a brick, multiplied it a lot of times, and eventually came up with a design, and used the corrugated iron again and some barge boards around the top, and hey presto, that printed quite well. I'm not sure you can see the detail of the mortar lines, and I think that if it's painted and weathered, the several layers of paint are actually going to make the mortar lines disappear. So I need to go back and change the design to again oversize the mortar lines to make them more pronounced so that they don't fill up so easily with the paint. The next thing to have a go at was some milk churns. I didn't go for the standard vertical sided one, I went for the conical one, and I even made the lids. Now, I'll come back to the lids later, but essentially it printed them, but they're so small you can't see them. So not everything is designed, and I spent a lot of time researching on the internet trying to find some designs that are already made that I can print out, and I managed to find this little plough which shows significantly how detailed this printer will go. Unfortunately, I snapped one of the handles off when I was removing it, but having printed it with some support structures, the process of removing it from the plate is painful to the point where you end up breaking things that are delicate. So again, I think it's down to you need to exaggerate sizes to make it robust enough to be able to be handled and printed. So encouraged by the fact that I can print reasonably large things like the garage, and the printer is capable of some excellent detail, I started to up my game. And one of the things I would eventually like to do is to make a oil refinery scenario. And the price of large tanks is very great, so I thought, okay, I'm going to have to scratch build them. And the one thing that's always held me up was the curved stairs. They're just not available as an accessory, so I thought that's an ideal thing that I can design and then print. Now obviously the size of the tank that I want is something like 300 millimeters in diameter, and unfortunately my printer is not capable of printing anything that big. So effectively I designed them, then cut them up into the model into two pieces and printed them out at the same time, but as two items that can then be joined together later. And to be honest, I used the auto support function so that you can print them in the middle of the air, and it's been very successful. I have to say that I'm very impressed with both my design and the fact that it prints. Now, it has to be said, I'm still learning, and the little wire thing rail up the side is extremely delicate. I think really I need to up the size of that again. It's about exaggerating things so that it's a bit more robust. But I think it's a great success. I'm absolutely amazed at how well it's turned out. I even put in the little holes of the grated foot plates, and I must admit they didn't really come out. There's an impression of the holes, but they're not actually holes. The liquid seems to have filled them, and it's not really seeable. But lessons learned, and if I go back to it and redesign it and put bigger holes in, I'm sure that they will print out. They won't be very realistic in a true scale of things, but they will give the artistic license that is needed to give it the visual impact that they've got holes in. So the lessons I've learned is not to try and do too many things at the same time, because my third and fourth prints, I put a load of designs on the plate and set it running to do them all. And unfortunately, operator error was that things weren't as they should be, and I had a number of failures. And then I put some single items in and they worked great. And then I went back to my file of the multiple items and it failed again. So I think until I learn what I'm doing, I need to essentially design something and print it and check that it works and that I can print it well and whether or not it needs supports and things. And then eventually get around to, once I've got a stock of items known to work, I can then coagulate them together onto a single print and have multiple items on the build plate. So in between the failures of trying to print multiple things at the same time, some things were printing and some were. Of the things that were, one of the items was something I downloaded, which is a duct thing that can sit on top of the building to show the air conditioning system, which worked out quite well. I also needed some little data plates, if you want to call them, to go on some tunnel portals, so that kind of worked well. For some low relief cottages I'm doing, I needed a service gate at the side, so that looked pretty good. And having had some failures when the garage was printed of the doors, yeah, I think they need some support, and again, the exaggeration needs to be that they're a lot thicker so that they stand up straight and don't waffle and wave around while they're being printed. So, lessons learned. Things need to be thicker and oversized, I think, is the answer. A bit of modeller's license in the design is definitely needed to make things more robust and visually not quite so fine, because if you print them too fine, you lose the detail and things start going wrong. I'm still not quite sure what's going wrong, but I've had several attempts at printing out a range of sizes of plant pots, and only the big ones ever come out. I need to go back and work out what the issue is with that. I know certainly some of them were sticking out below the platform, and therefore the ones that were above them were printing in space, but I've got to go back. So I think another lesson is only print one thing at a time. Don't start to run before you can walk. It's a slow learning process. So hopefully I'll see you in the next one. And from me, it's ciao for now.